November is bulb planting season. Now you will know that I have not planted a single bulb yet, so don't stress if you haven't planted any. It had been really mild, but already in the last few days I've noticed a real shift in the weather, and you know that it's bulb planting time when you are out in the day and you have to wear a coat. You guys know that I am the coldest person in the world, but there is definitely a chill in the air, and I feel that if you didn't have a coat on, you probably would be a bit chilly. So we are nearly getting there with regards to tulip planting. So if you're ready to plant tulips and you think it's coat weather where you are, I would say we're almost clear to be planting tulips. Definitely, I would have thought in the next few weeks it will be consistently low, but that is what we want. We want the temperatures to be consistently down. We want the soil temperature to come down. I don't see any heat waves on the horizon, and I do think that drop is really starting to happen, but it's only started to happen the last few days. So that is why we hold fire on our tulips, because if you plant them when it's too mild, there is a risk that they could get tulip fire, which we don't want. So I would say, yeah, probably in the next couple of weeks I will start to plant mine. It could be that you've got lots of other bulbs that you're ready to plant as well, and again, I haven't planted a single bulb, not even a daffodil, so I thought it would be a good time now to run through a few easy bulb planting tips. Don't stress about it. Do what you can do. You've still got time to be taking advantage of the sales and getting yourself some bulbs if you haven't ordered any. But bulbs are really easy. You don't need to have any fancy expensive tools. Get them in and you will be rewarded in spring. So first I'm going to show you the bulb planting tool that I use. As you can see, this is very homemade. So it was just an old handle that we had from a fork, I think, and Ben just made it a bit pointy for me at the end. And this is what I use to make my holes. You can get metal bulb tools that like take a plug of the soil out. You then put the bulb in and then release it and put the soil back on. You can buy those. I think they're about £10, so they're quite inexpensive. You can also get electric hole driller things that like an attachment that goes on a drill and makes really big holes. Again, you can buy them. I just tend to just use my trusty. It works for me, it's free. So that's what I do. Now, any bulb that you plant, whether it is a small crocus or a big tulip, a big daffodil, you want to be planting that bulb 3 times the depth of the bulb. So if this is your tulip bulb, 1, 2, 3. So when you're making your hole, if you look on the back, I made a little mark because that was roughly 3 times the depth of my tulip. So it just made it easy that I knew I had to get it in that deep. And then you drop your bulb in and then you cover it back up. Now, bulbs, pointy side up, you can't really see the roots, but often they have a flatter base. So it's always, always, always pointy side up. But let me tell you, you will try and put that pointy side up, and I guarantee that some of them will end up the wrong way. Don't stress about it. Bulbs are very clever. They'll find a way. If you try digging around to try and turn the bulb, sometimes like a soil avalanche happens and all the soil falls on top and just makes a really big mess. So try and get them pointy side up, but don't stress if you can't. Now, with regards to spacing, I'm going to show you a few ways that you can space your bulbs. Right, so I'm going to demonstrate this for you like this. Now, there are a couple of different types of tulips and reasons that you might be planting tulips. So you might be choosing varieties, and actually this is one of those, which you're hoping are going to come back in subsequent years. So you're hoping that they're going to reflower year after year. If you are planting them for that reason, you want to make sure that you are giving them enough space, because what will happen with a tulip bulb is when they naturalize, they will split and divide and you'll get new bulbs, and they then will flower in subsequent years. So you want to give them enough space for that to happen. So I would say that probably spacing of about that is what you want to do. If that is going to be in your borders, that's absolutely fine. If it's going to be in containers and you want them to come back year after year, what you need to remember is that, well, and in the borders, you're going to have to let that foliage completely die back naturally. So it's going to go yellow and crispy and brown, because it's going to need to feed the bulb in order to produce you a flower in subsequent years. So that foliage has to stay attached. You can't go tidying up the foliage. So if you are planting them in pots, that's why I recommend planting them in an inner pot, because when they are done and when they are dying down naturally, you can remove the inner pot and let them die back naturally somewhere else, somewhere that you don't have to look at them. So if you are hoping that you're going to have them next year and you don't want to be doing anything with them, then they're going to need a lot of space. If you are growing them purely for your display or for cut flowers, what flower farmers will do is plant them often in troughs, and they will squeeze them in really tight. Now, I planted up some really big planters last year, and we crammed lots in rows, just like I had seen flower farmers do. But for me, I didn't like the look. There was so much foliage crammed together that I didn't feel the flowers looked very nice. I guess for cut flowers, the only thing that is important for the flower farmer is that they have a stem that they can cut for flowers. But I didn't think the display looked very nice at all. It was too crammed. So I would say really in a pot, that perfect spacing would look something like that. Actually, I've got one left over there. So that is one packet of tulips. How many have we got there? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 10 tulips. That is about the spacing that I will be doing in my own pots. Now remember, if you're wanting to extend the period of flowers in your display, then you might be wanting to plant multiple colours, multiple varieties in the same pot. So what you want to be doing is doing 2 or even 3 layers just like this in one pot. So remember that they've got to be 3 times the depth. So you're going to need that much soil above the top layer. So you really could only squeeze 3 layers in an absolutely enormous pot. But just in a normal 30cm pot, I would do 2 layers of bulbs. So you could either do 1 layer of one variety, another layer of another variety, or just mix both varieties up together in a bowl and just do your 2 layers. So that is what I'm going to be doing in mine. So I know that this one is an early flowerer and the dark is a late. So those 2 would be perfect in one pot. So I'm going to do 2 layers in all of my pots. Now what I thought I would show you now is what might happen to some of your bulbs inside packets, because like me, you might have ordered them, they might have been sat somewhere waiting for you to plant. Now what you might notice is sprouting happening. Don't worry, it's totally normal. If they're starting to sprout, it's just because they're ready to grow and they don't need a lot to start growing. That's totally normal, totally okay, and actually that growth is at the top, so that helps you to see visually where you need to be planting it. So these are crocus and they are ready to be planted, slightly pointy side up. Another thing that you might notice on some of your bulbs is a very slight bit of mold growth on the outer shell of your bulbs. Bulbs need to breathe, they've been in bags, there's a bit of moisture in the bag. Now a little bit of mold on the outside of the bulb is fine. Just ignore it, plant it, treat it like normal. If a bulb absolutely smells rancid, is soft and squishy and rotten, get rid of it. Sometimes you'll get the odd bulb in a bag that is rotten. It's just one of those things. It could be that it's just got too damp and yeah, it has rotten. It's just one of those things. You also might notice that roots start to grow and sprout. That's absolutely fine. Again, gives you a little bit of a clue with how you're going to be planting that. Roots at the bottom, pointy side at the top. So don't panic if you see that. Totally normal. You will then have your smaller corms, like these anemones, and they are like rock hard little nuggets. Now they need pre-soaking. Don't stress if you haven't got any of these soaked yet. You've still got loads of time, and in fact you can spread out your planting of these so that you've got lots of flowers. So I have pre-soaked my blue variety. I'm going to be doing burgundy next, and also a pale pastel colour, but I'm not going to soak them all at the same time. I'm actually going to stagger the growth so that I can have flowers for longer. So if I soak batch a month, then hopefully the flowers will head closer into summer. I'm going to show you an example of a very dirty pot, but you will see that inside of this pot I have added an inner pot, and this is exactly what I use for filling my pots. Now this isn't any fancy pot that I have bought, this is just maybe a 3 or 4 litre pot that I just had laying around. I've then put an upturned pot inside that just rests on, and that is how I will be planting bulbs in this pot. It doesn't matter that there's gaps around the edges. It might look a bit strange now, but by the time all of the tulip foliage grows, you won't even see the gaps, so it doesn't matter. But what it means is that when the tulips are past their best, the foliage starts to fade, I can just lift out this inner pot, let that die back naturally, and then I can put another inner pot in here with my stuff for summer. So it's just the perfect way of having a really quick switch over. So your display might be looking nice, you'll have this pot that's done, so you quickly take out the tulips and add your next plant. Now the final important thing to mention about bulb planting is that bulbs hate being wet. So I choose to add some horticultural grit to my compost mix so that it is really free draining. If you've got somewhere more sheltered in your garden, then you can plant up your bulbs and move your pots somewhere more sheltered where perhaps they will get less of the wet weather over the winter. Some people like to drag them close to the side of their house because it is a little bit more sheltered being closer to the house. But for me, lots of my pots just kind of get left laying around, and using the grit worked really well. I just buy horticultural grit from the garden centre. I did it on a 3 for 2 offer, so I just bought 3 bags and added it to every one of my pots, and I will show you when I start to pot mine up exactly how to do that. It is not compulsory, you do not have to add grit, but just to make you aware that the cause of bulbs rotting is when they're just sat in very, very wet conditions. So you want to do your best to stop that happening. Now, chicken wire is the final ingredient that you might need for your bulb planting. Now, I don't have a problem here with squirrels, but I know that lots of people do. So if you are planting bulbs in pots or even in your border and you have got a squirrel issue, then getting yourself some chicken wire is going to save your sanity, because there is nothing more demoralizing than watching a squirrel steal your bulbs. So you can cut a piece that fits the size of your pot, and I have even seen people using it in their border to cover areas where they have planted the bulbs. It is really frustrating for people that they have to do that, but it is a proven way to stop digging. I have seen that people use sticks, rose thorns to lay on top of pots and to lay on their borders. For us, we do cover our borders with sticks, but that's to stop our cat digging them up. Not that she would dig the bulbs out, but she digs and goes to the toilet and it gets a bit messy, so we just choose to lay bamboo canes down on the ground. But if you've got squirrels, get yourself some chicken wire. As soon as I start planting my bulbs, I will update this video so that you can actually see me planting, but I'm not quite there yet, but I will be in the next week or so.